Right, can you hear me? Yes. Oh, goodness me. Right, thank you. First of all, I just want to say to Dan, to Rory, Sangeeta, Duncan, Maria and all the organisers and all of you for hanging on as the rain comes down, the tears of heaven for the elephants and the rhino. I want to give yourselves a round of applause. So maybe it is at last good news for the elephants. But I will tell you this, I have one fear. And right now I think there are a whole bunch of ivory dealers in this country and antique dealers who deal in ivory, packing up elephant products, sticking them in the back of a car and sending them to Europe where they can carry on their business. So I call on the government to introduce an immediate moratorium on all exports of ivory. Goodness me, this has taken a long time, and it somehow indicates to me what a low priority this was given by some members of the government. We have to be thankful for small mercies. But I'm not here to talk about elephants for once, I'm here to talk about rhino. So the good news is that in some parts of Africa and Asia, rhino numbers are stable, even growing, and poaching levels are low. However, some rhino populations are so low that the sheer lack of numbers threatens their survival. And just in case you're asking, captive breeding in zoos of the Sumatran and Javan rhinos has proved pretty much a non-starter. The greatest impact of poaching remains in South Africa, where it's likely, despite a massive effort by the state, private conservancies, conservationists, organisations all over the place, individuals, the international community, it's likely that more than 1,000 rhino will probably be poached by the end of this year. That will be the 5th year in a row that the number poached will be more than 4 figures, will be 1,000 or more. I say it's likely that that will be the case because the government is being particularly coy with the numbers. We used to have numbers on a monthly basis. Now the last official figure I can find, and if someone's got a better one, let me know, is to the end of June, and at that point it was 529. If my prediction is right, then by the end of this year, 5% of the rhino in South Africa in 2017 will have been poached. It's a rate greater than the number that are born and replace them, so the population is in decline. However, the situation is made worse by one relatively new factor. Last year, a gentleman named John Hume, Humeless, visited London. Mr. Hume is the most successful private rhino captive breeder in South Africa, and he has an estimated 1,700 rhino in his possession. And Mr. Hume's recipe, and he calls it a recipe, for saving the rhino is to breed them, cut off their horns every year, and then sell the horn. So, breeding, of course, is legal, but the selling of horn is not, until recently. In April 2017, Mr. Hume challenged the national moratorium on the domestic sale of rhino, and he won. In August, just 5 months later, Mr. Hume held his first rhino auction for horn, and reportedly sold about 1/2 ton of rhino horn for about $500,000 to private buyers. And I expect, as probably you do, not just any private buyers. The advertising for the auction was available in Chinese and Vietnamese. So I think you can guess at least what some of the rhino was for and who bought it. Now, as I understand it, the South African Minister for the Environment, Ed Malewa, who I've met many times and who's been very challenging to deal with, has suggested she might, after all, be in favour of legalizing the international sale of rhino horn. It's very hard to believe, but it is true. At a time when most countries have understood the fatal link between legal markets for ivory and ivory poaching, South Africa, the Rainbow Nation, well, at least its leaders, seem to be deciding that selling rhino horn, both domestically and internationally, is an okay thing to do. It's a little bit like that Texas lawmaker. I don't know if you saw this on the TV or read it in the papers. In the last few days, following that horrendous shooting of people in Las Vegas, he said instead of gun control, there should be gun decontrol, and that everyone should be allowed to carry automatic weapons. He said it was like the old Wild West, when Wyatt Earp carried a gun and shootings were way down. What he forgot to mention is that Wyatt Earp insisted that anyone entering the city had to leave their gun at the door. So, legalizing rhino horn, in my view, will only add fuel to the poaching fire. I'm slightly lost for words when it comes to what, in my view, is the sheer stupidity of those who want to resume trade. They say the rhino horn trade ban didn't work. But let me tell you, it actually did. And I'll give you some numbers, because sometimes numbers are important. In 2000, just 12 rhino were poached in South Africa. And although it went up and down a little bit, between 2000 and 2007, that's 8 years, 130 rhino in total were poached. That's an average of 16. I'll just say that again. 16 rhino were poached each year on average. That 2007 was the year when it was rumored, whispers from Southeast Asia, that rhino horn was not only a fever reducer and a possible potency enhancer, but that it was a cure for cancer. And in the next 9 years, between 2007 and 2016, a total of 6,102 rhino were poached in South Africa, an average of 678 a year. They said, I'm looking at a statue of Winston Churchill over there, they said in the war, careless talk costs lives. You know it, they know it, we all know it. Rhino horn doesn't cure cancer, it doesn't solve your headache, it's not a fever reducer, and it doesn't sort out your hangover. It's not a recreational drug, and it's not an investment unless you're sick in the head. So, I'm going to come to the end in a moment, and thank you for staying with this. My friends, the world has always been a bit mad, but it now seems a bit more mad. We abandon things that are working. We risk the lives of wild animals and people on speculative ventures. We still believe that it's okay to strive for perpetual growth and deplete the planet's resources without understanding the consequences and perhaps not caring about the consequences. We elect politicians who seemingly inevitably treat the environment as a low priority, or if you're unfortunate enough to be an American citizen, a no priority. After 33 years of doing this, I've come to a conclusion. I honestly believe that if we leave it up to them, our elected representatives, and the bureaucracies they surround themselves with, things will not get done. Or they'll get done at the last minute when the problems become a crisis, and then, by then, it might be too late. So, it is up to us. The silent vigil that so many of you participated in is important. Marching is important. Petitions are important. Letters to number 10, delivered this morning by the way, are important. But most important of all is that we take our destiny and the destiny of our planet and our fellow passengers in our own hands and become part of a movement for change, a movement built on compassionate conservation, equality, respect, integrity, honesty, and action. So as the rain comes down, I'll say this, the tigers, the lions, the cheetahs, they need us. The whales and dolphins, they need us. The animals breeding trapped for fur need us. The animals locked up or used for entertainment, they need us. Elephants need us, rhinos need us. And to misquote the famous speech by President John F. Kennedy, ask not what the planet can do for you, but ask what you can do for the planet. It starts now. Thank you.
Hello, Travers. Thank you. Thank you to Action Therapist UK. Your guys' coach on guitar, Paul, and don't worry. Most of all, thank you, all of you, for making this possible. These things don't exist without you. Keep coming to them, keep making the change. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.